Monster Guys present a Yokai podcast presentation, bringing to life, through short stories and informative discussion, the strange, the beautiful, the whimsical, and the mystery of Japanese yokai.
Now please enjoy a story about
the Nopperabo, in a story titled Faceless, written and narrated by C. Michael McGannon, presented by the Monster Guys.
Children love their freedom. Often this comes at the expense of the patience of their parents. Kosuke was not a bad child by any stretch of the imagination. He was studious, kept himself active, and listened to his mother, usually, but on occasion he did try her patience. Kosuke loved to find different places to fish, as all adventurous boys should. He would explore the edges of his small world when there were no other duties to tend to at home. On one such hot, boring day, Kosuke grabbed his fishing rod and a basket, humming to himself happily. "Where are you going this time?" his mother asked, smiling at her son. "I am going to fish." She laughed. "I can see that. Where do you intend to throw your line this time?" Kosuke had found several spots to fish in, but there was a particular place that had always held his attention, and one which he had never felt brave enough to venture to. The old folks whispered about it, saying it was a place haunted by spirits and strange animals. "There's a pond beyond the old hag's house," he told her, as vague as he could manage, for he was sure that she would not approve of him going if she knew which pond he spoke of. "Do not call her that, Kosuke, that's rude. Wait, the pond with the cherry blossom." He nodded slowly. "Kosuke, you must not go there to fish, or visit there for any reason. It is a haunted place. Please, find another place to fish today." Kosuke hung his head and shuffled toward the door. "Yes, mother." She watched him wander off before returning to her own tasks, still worried. Outside, Kosuke took off running. The sun was hot on his shoulders, but he didn't mind for the breeze. He passed several people he knew on the way, all stopping to offer him a friendly greeting. He also passed his friend Nagasawa, a soba vendor, who sat snoring under the shade of his little vending stand. "Nagasawa-san!" he yelled as he passed by, laughing as the older, sleeping man nearly fell from his seat in surprise. "Kosuke, you rascal!" The old man jokingly pounded the air with his fist. When Kosuke had to pass the hag's house, he slowed. The woman who lived there was a haggard and solitary woman, and always gave him the creeps. Some people whispered that she was a witch, who used a dog as her familiar, but no one dared to try to prove the matter. He kept an eye on the darkness where her rice paper door had been left open, waiting for the dog spirit to appear and fly at him. But it was a silly superstition, and no evil spirits came after the boy. He laughed and called himself silly, then continued to run, perhaps a little faster than before. The pond was not far beyond that, and he reached it quickly. It was a serene place, and it seemed the sun did not beat down quite as hot near the water here. The single cherry blossom tree provided shade and a calming rustle, in rhythm with the ripples upon the pond, created by wind and playful fish. Kosuke smiled at the peaceful atmosphere and set down his basket, readying his fishing rod. He reclined against the sheltering tree and tossed his line. So at peace was he, while waiting for the fish to take interest, that Kosuke allowed his eyes to close, a smile upon his small, round face. The warmth of the sun caused his mind to wander. The breeze sung him a lullaby, soothing Kosuke into a gentle nap. When he woke, it was night, and it was no longer warm. In fact, Kosuke shivered, finding himself quite cold. His basket was gone, but he still held on to his fishing rod, which he now clung to. "What are you doing here, child?" Kosuke jumped, not having noticed the woman standing slightly to his right. She was dressed in white and black, and offered a kindly smile. "I came here to fish," he answered, fearful. "Child, did you not know that it is unsafe to fish here? It is said this place is sacred, kept by spirits." "I have heard the rumor, miss, but surely it's just a story." The woman stepped closer, leaning down, eye to eye with the boy. "It is not just a story," she said with a smile. The woman reached up, fingers digging into her forehead, and with a smooth motion, she wiped her face away. Before Kosuke stood a woman with an empty face, her skin as blank as an eggshell. Kosuke screamed and ran from the pond, dropping his fishing rod in a mad dash to escape this terror. He saw the old hag's house and pounded the earth with his feet as hard as he could, catching sight of a large dog watching from that empty blackness in the night. It only added to his haste. "Kosuke, Kosuke, what's wrong?" cried Nagisawa from his soba stand. "Nagisawa-san." Kosuke leaned on his friend's booth. It didn't occur to him that Nagisawa did not keep his stand open this late at night. "You'll never believe it. I went fishing at the old pond with the big cherry blossom." Nagisawa sat back in shock. "The haunted one?" "Yes. I fell asleep in the warmth of the sun, and when I woke up there was a strange lady there. She told me it wasn't safe to fish there, and then her face disappeared." Nagisawa's eyes were wide with surprise. "You mean like this?" he asked, reaching up to wipe his face. When his hand dropped, Nagasawa's face was gone. Kosuke fell back from the vendor's booth, scrambling away as Nagasawa's muffled laughter echoed in the night. The man's eerie cackle bounced off trees and through Kosuke's mind long after the soba stand was out of sight. Finally, he made it home. Kosuke was unsure what time of night it was, but his house was unusually dark. There was a faint glow coming from within, hardening the fear that sat in his stomach. He followed the glow into his house, around corners of rooms that should have been more familiar, and through the hallway. The light was coming from the kitchen. There, Kosuke's mother prepared the evening meal by the light of a single flickering candle. When he saw his mother, his fear melted away. He ran to her, wrapping his arms around tight. "Kosuke, what's wrong? You look as if you've been crying." "Mother, I went to the pond. I'm sorry, you were right. It's a dangerous place, and I promise I'll never go there again." She rubbed his back, looking him in the eye, concerned. "Tell me what happened, Kosuke." "It was terrible," he began. Kosuke retold his story from the beginning to end, about the warmth and peace of the small pond, about waking up at night, the stranger in black and white, and then about how his friend Nagisawa had also wiped his face away right before his very own eyes. His mother stopped him there. "That's horrible." "So they took their faces off?" she asked. "Like this?" To Kosuke's horror, his mother reached up and smoothed her hand over her face. She stared at him with eyeless, mouthless features, tilting her head just so, and Kosuke gasped. The single candle suddenly went out, throwing them into darkness.
The Nopperabo, a truly terrifying tale, and a popular one. This is actually a tale that we use in some of our live storytelling because it's kind of fun to portray.
It is.
And it has its humorous opportunities as well as its scary moments.
Yeah, usually when we tell this, I think we put it in the more comical light. And this story is a great example of those stories that don't have any real resolution. And oftentimes they don't have, a purpose, it seems, more than to entertain.
Yeah, and it is entertaining, especially done live or reading a story like this. Now, this particular story kind of incorporates an actual Japanese tale into a modern setting, and it also incorporates other yokai just kind of in the midst of the story, which I think is actually appropriate because, as we've learned through our time with experts on yokai, Japan is just full of these creatures everywhere you go. So it would stand to reason that if you were off to face the Nopperabo, you would probably come in contact with some others as well. And if I'm not mistaken, I hear the Inugami in there as
Yes.
one of those extras, just kind of cameo roles.
That was an inugami that Kosuke saw as he was running by.
It's a classic tale from Japanese culture that you've kind of mixed with a modern setting, with the story of the little boy, which in its original form is actually an old man who goes fishing at a sacred temple.
Well, originally, this actually combined the two stories that are kind of classic Nopperabo stories in Japanese folklore. In older folklore, there is a story of a man who goes fishing at an imperial pond, the imperial koi pond. And then there's also a separate story about a vendor who turns out to be a Nopperabo. So this story kind of combines both of those together and then replaces the old man with a child. Now, I feel like on one hand, that's fun. It makes it more of a spooky ghost story. On the other hand, it's important to note that originally this wasn't really a cautionary tale. It wasn't like a parent was telling a child, don't go fishing there. Although I guess his wife was telling him not to go fishing there, but it wasn't like the boogeyman is going to get you to your kids. It was more of the entertaining horror story. So there are a couple elements that were kind of added into this particular one. But the Nopperabo is a lot of fun. It doesn't really harm anybody, at least not physically. It's just all about the psychological terror that it will put you through. It's actually a yokai that may not be a single spirit. Several different creatures might turn into, or I should say it this way, this is a favorite form of several different creatures that like to scare humans.
Yeah, I think historically you're speaking of the kitsune as one, the tanuki, and others as well.
Yeah, one of those being the mujina, which is a badger that's kind of similar to the kitsune and the tanuki, but a little less popular. But that was another one that oftentimes turned into a Nopperabo just for the sake of scaring people.
Yeah, and again, we have a yokai that is there to terrify people and scar them psychologically, perhaps. But other than that, it's just a fun ghost story. It's just a fun story to spin. It's a faceless ghost.
That's really it. It's faceless. I would say that it's still popular urban legend to these days. It's gone beyond folklore. People still believe that they'll run into Nopperabo in modern Japan if you're not careful.
We might have to dial up Zach or Matthew on that to find out if there's any substance or reasoning behind that other than just being a fun story to tell. Always interested in that kind of stuff. In Japan, a lot of times, you don't get that reconciliation, though, all the time. So sometimes you're just left hanging. But it's fun nonetheless. Good story, and we certainly appreciate you hanging out with us tonight and sharing in our Yokai podcast for the week. As always, stay tuned to themonsterguys.com. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Just type in The Monster Guys, and we'll be happy to hear from you. Thanks for everyone who's chiming in these past couple of weeks. We have a lot of goodies coming your way. Again, thanks for hanging out with us tonight.
Good night.